My family gave me the worthless house thinking it was nothing. What I found inside changed everything, and now they want to reconcile. I never thought I would be telling this story, but here I am. So I, 29 male, work in IT doing network systems for a healthcare company. Nothing flashy, but it pays okay. Around $88,000 a year. I've got a little one-bedroom apartment in a quieter part of town. Rent's not bad, place stays clean, and I don't have to share walls with people who throw parties at 3 a.m., so I can't complain. It's not much, but I worked for it, just like everything else in my life. My older brother Brian, 34 male, works in real estate. He's the kind of guy who always looks like he's headed to a rooftop brunch or one of those industry mixers where everyone's trying to impress each other. Brian was always the golden child. No joke, he could crash a borrowed car, blame the wind, and my parents would say, well, at least he's learning. Meanwhile, if I forgot to rinse a plate, it was like I personally declared war on the kitchen. The favoritism was always there. Brian got the newest phone when it came out. I got the hand-me-down. He got a car at 17. I borrowed the family minivan until it broke down for good. He dropped out of college twice and they paid for both tries. I finished my degree while working part-time and still paid off my own student loans. I'm not trying to sound bitter. It just is what it is. It became background noise. But the one person who never played favorites was my grandfather, my dad's dad. We called him Pop. He was old school, wore those same suspenders every holiday, watched westerns like they were documentaries, and always had hard candy in his coat pocket. No idea where he even got it. Pop was quiet around most people, but with me, he'd open up. He liked having someone listen. After my grandma died, Pop didn't have many people left who actually showed up. My dad would stop by maybe twice a year and spend most of that time checking the clock. Brian just didn't go at all. Said it was too sad or not a good time, so I went. Every week. I'd help with little things, bringing groceries, fixing a lamp, setting up his internet, which he hated, just stuff like that. Half the time we just watched old movies and didn't even talk. He appreciated the company. We got close over those years, closer than I ever expected. And yeah, he started dropping hints. Not casual ones either. He told me more than once, "You're the one who checks on me. You're the one who actually gives a damn. I'm making sure you're taken care of when I'm gone." He didn't say it to make me feel special. He just said it like it was fact, like he'd already made up his mind. I never brought that up to my family. I didn't see a point. I didn't expect anything from him. And honestly, I wasn't counting on it. I don't live my life waiting around for handouts. But knowing he trusted me, that meant something. And if he left me something, I'd treat it right. Pop passed away a few months ago. It was sudden. Heart failure, they said. One minute he was there and the next he wasn't. I was the one who got the call. I was the one who cleaned out his fridge and canceled his mail. That part sucked more than I'll ever admit out loud. The house was quiet in a way I wasn't ready for. What made it worse was how fast people started circling like vultures. My dad, my uncles, even Brian. They suddenly remembered where Pop lived. Not a single one of them had been there in months, maybe years. Now they were all acting like they had some deep, unshakable bond with him. It was honestly uncomfortable. About 2 weeks after the funeral, Pop's lawyer called me, said he needed the whole family present for the will reading. He didn't say much else, just that it was something Pop had been very particular about. When I told my dad, he just nodded and said, "It'll be good to get some closure." But there was something in his face, like this quiet excitement he was trying to hide. Brian, same deal, said, "Hopefully the old man left something good behind." I didn't say anything, just nodded and let it go. There were a lot of us at the lawyer's office. My parents, Brian, my uncles David and George, their wives, their kids. Some of them I hadn't seen in years. We all crammed into this room that smelled like old books and printer toner. The lawyer looked tired. He had one of those heavy leather folders you only ever see in movies. Before he started reading, I sat in the back and just looked around. Everyone had this weird look, half sad, half expectant, like they weren't here for memories, just the payout. And it hit me that nobody really asked how Pop was doing in the last couple years. Not once. They were too busy. But now they were ready to claim a piece of him. And I won't lie. I thought I knew what was coming. Pop said I'd be taken care of. I thought maybe a portion, something he set aside. I didn't expect miracles, but I trusted his word. We all squeezed into this stuffy, overly beige conference room. The chairs were too close together, like they weren't meant to hold this many people. My mom sat with her arms crossed, barely looking around. My dad was unusually upbeat, cracking small talk with my Uncle George about how organized Pop always was. Brian, of course, was tapping away on his phone until the last possible second. The lawyer, older guy, definitely used to uncomfortable silences, walked in holding a thick leather folder. Looked like something that belonged in a vault. He greeted everyone, took his seat, and cleared his throat like he was about to deliver a court ruling. This document was handed to me personally by Mr. Rinab, grandfather's full name. He instructed me not to open or read it until after his passing, and that its contents were not to be shared with anyone beforehand. I've respected those instructions to the letter. He opened the folder. My stomach tensed up without warning. This was it. He started reading. To my grandson Brian, last name, I leave the following: ownership of the Lancaster property, all related contents, and one of my investment accounts held at Marshall Bancorp. The approximate value of these assets combined is just over $310,000. I didn't even have time to react. My dad and Brian both sat up straighter, like someone handed them VIP passes. Brian looked around the room like he just got knighted. The lawyer continued. To my son Richard, last name, I leave my primary residence at 44 Willow Creek, the Mercedes sedan in the garage, and full access to my central retirement portfolio. My mom gasped a little. Not like over the top, but enough for everyone to hear it. I looked across the room. Uncle George was staring blankly at the wall. David had this tight look on his face, like he was trying not to speak first. The lawyer kept going. To my sons George and David, I leave my sincere thanks for the time we shared. You each will receive a framed photo of our family's original home, which I kept in the attic. The air got sucked out of the room. David literally said, "You've got to be kidding me." The lawyer stopped reading for a second, probably to let that awkward tension settle. It didn't. Everyone started shifting in their chairs. My cousin Megan whispered something to her sister, and their mom shushed them. Even the lawyer looked a little uncomfortable but kept it moving. To my other grandchildren, he said, scanning the page, I wish you success and happiness in your lives. That was it. No names, no dollar amounts. Just a sentence. I sat there frozen, not even mad yet, just confused. Then the lawyer cleared his throat again and said, one final bequest remains. Everyone leaned in. To my grandson, my full name, I leave ownership of the property located at 407 Baxter Street and all of its contents. That was it. No explanation, no savings, just that house. Brian broke the silence first. The Baxter place? Are you serious? Uncle David stood up. This doesn't make any sense. He told me the family land would be divided fairly. Uncle George joined in. We were with him last Christmas. He never said anything about cutting us out. My cousin Megan actually said, he left Brian over $300K and didn't even mention us. The room erupted. People talking over each other, raising their voices, demanding to know if this was a mistake. The lawyer kept saying, this is the original signed document I was given. But nobody was listening anymore. I just sat there, still, like I wasn't in the room, like someone had hit pause on my whole body. And then I heard someone, don't even remember who, say quietly, honestly, I thought he'd leave everything to my name. Yeah, so did I. I looked at my dad and Brian. They weren't even pretending to hide their grins. My mom was pretending to be shocked, but couldn't stop glancing over at the lawyer's folder like it was a treasure chest. Brian leaned back in his chair like he was on vacation. Guess the old man thought that haunted shed suited you? Brian muttered with a laugh. Hope the roof doesn't fall on your head. I didn't answer, just kept staring forward. Someone asked what the Baxter house was worth. Another cousin whispered that it was basically falling apart. Someone else laughed and said the roof had caved in years ago. Probably full of rats and spider webs, Uncle George mumbled. I still didn't move. Not because I was stunned. Not exactly. But because something about all this was seriously off. Pop told me, flat out, that he was leaving everything to me. Not in passing, not as some casual, sentimental comment. He said it more than once. He said he trusted me. Said I was the only one who showed up when it wasn't convenient. So why would he leave me an abandoned house and nothing else? I looked back up at the lawyer, who was now explaining next steps for transferring assets. He asked me if I wanted to receive the keys to the Baxter place or wait for them to be mailed. I said I'd take them now. I didn't know why. Maybe just wanted something physical in my hand to remind me I hadn't imagined the whole thing. So I left that room with a house everyone else thought was worthless, and Brian left with a smug grin and a couple $100,000 coming his way. While people were still arguing and packing up, I glanced at my dad again. He was whispering something to my mom and pointing at Brian, who was already back on his phone, probably texting Amanda about the inheritance like it was a winning lottery ticket. That's when I knew something was wrong. Something wasn't adding up here, and I wasn't about to let it go. After that disaster of a will reading, I was mentally checked out for the rest of the day. Everyone else seemed fired up, either pissed, smug, or in full denial. But me? I was quiet, processing. I didn't even know what I was supposed to feel. Shocked? Betrayed? Embarrassed? Mostly, I just felt weird. But my parents insisted I come over for dinner that night. It's still family, my mom said. Like that was supposed to mean something after I got handed a decaying house, while Brian basically walked away with a fortune and a victory lap. Still, I went. Maybe I just wanted to see how they were going to play it. When I got there, Brian was already sitting on the couch like he owned the place. Feet up, scrolling on his phone, laughing at something Amanda had texted him. My dad was standing at the kitchen counter sipping a soda like it was wine, looking way too relaxed. My mom was setting the table, clearly in hostess mode. I sat down in the living room, didn't say much. Nobody did for a minute. Then, Brian broke the silence with, "So, how's it feel owning the creepiest house in town?" I looked at him. "Still better than renting from a mortgage company you can't afford." He laughed. "Chill, man. Just messing around. It's just... Baxter? Seriously?" Before I could even reply, my dad chimed in from the kitchen. "I think your grandfather wanted to keep it simple. He made choices based on what he thought made sense." "Sure," I said. "Just seemed like a lot for some people and almost nothing for others." Brian snorted. "It's not nothing. You got a whole house. I mean, yeah, it needs work, but it's property. You should be grateful." That word. Grateful. I looked at my dad. "Did you know about any of this beforehand?" He didn't even blink. "Of course not. Your grandfather handled his business privately." My mom stepped in. "He probably assumed you'd make the best of what you got. That's always been your thing." "That's not the point," I said. "He told me, multiple times, that he was leaving everything to me. Said it was already settled. That's why this doesn't make sense." My dad set his drink down a little too hard. "Don't start twisting things. He didn't say that to us. And even if he did, people change their minds. Maybe he thought Brian was more responsible now." That one hit hard. "More responsible? He's already planning a vacation to Tulum with Amanda." Brian grinned. "Don't be salty, man. I'm just living." Grandpa clearly saw potential. The rest of the meal went by like that. Awkward, tense, and fake smiley. Every time I tried to bring up something meaningful, they brushed it off. Every time I said something felt off, they acted like I was being dramatic. When dinner ended, I got up to leave. They stayed behind in the kitchen, dishes clinking, voices low. I stood by the door for a second and just listened. Brian whispered, "He's not gonna let it go." My dad replied, "He'll cool off once he sees how worthless that house is." Then my mom said something I couldn't quite catch, and they all laughed. That kind of low, smug laugh that only happens when people think they're in the clear. I stood there for a second, then said loudly, "All right, I'm heading out." They went dead quiet. No reply. No one even said goodbye. I walked to my car without looking back. On the drive home, my mind was racing. I kept thinking about Pop, how specific he was, how deliberate. He didn't do anything halfway. So why would he hand Brian and my dad the world and toss me a glorified shed? None of it matched up. Pop had called Brian a clown once. Literally. Said he played businessman with fake watches and debt. He didn't trust him. He barely talked to him. And my dad? Pop once told me, "Your father's good at pretending things are fine when he's benefiting." That line stuck with me for years. Now it hit even harder. If Pop really changed his mind, why do it so suddenly? Why not tell me? He saw me just a few days before he passed. I helped him fix the back door. We sat on the porch for an hour. He seemed fine, clear-headed, and he still said, "You're the only one I can count on." So what happened? I got home, tossed my keys on the counter, and just stood there. My apartment was quiet, clean, paid for by hard work. I looked around and thought, is this where it stops? I just accept that Pop changed everything at the last minute with no explanation? That didn't sit right. I remembered how Pop kept journals, how he wrote notes to himself. He wasn't careless, and he wouldn't hand a lawyer a will and not say a word to me, especially after everything he told me. There had to be more. So I sat down with the key to the Baxter house in my hand, just stared at it for a while. Everyone else laughed at that place, thought it was a dump. Brian made jokes like I'd inherited a horror movie set. Even my dad clearly thought it was a slap in the face. But what if Pop left me that house for a reason? What if that house was the one place no one else would look? I wasn't sure what I'd find, but I was done sitting still. Something was off, and I was going to figure out exactly what it was. Work was chaos that whole month. We had 2 system rollouts collide at once, which meant 12-hour days and weekends full of emergency calls and trying to get junior techs to stop unplugging stuff they shouldn't. Between that and the mental stress of the whole will situation, I barely had time to sleep, let alone think about that old house on Baxter. But it didn't stop my dad and Brian from living it up. Brian announced his engagement to Amanda the same week his check cleared. No surprise there. She immediately posted a life update on Instagram with a ring that looked suspiciously rented. She's been on a shopping spree ever since. Designer bags, some spa package, and even a trip to Napa for healing energy. I overheard Brian telling someone at dinner that he was reinvesting the inheritance into love, which is probably the most Brian sentence ever. Meanwhile, my dad was gutting Pop's main house. Said he was modernizing it, but it looked more like he was erasing Pop altogether, repainting everything, tossing furniture, replacing the backyard shed Pop built himself. Worst part? He was tossing all of Pop's old books, photos, even paperwork. Said it was junk and that he didn't have room to store it. That pissed me off. I told him I'd come grab anything he hadn't thrown away yet. He acted like I was being sentimental for no reason, but whatever. I wasn't going to let all of Pop's life get dumped like garbage. So I drove over, boxed up 2 huge containers of his old stuff, family photos, letters, notebooks, and some old war memorabilia, and took it over to the Baxter house. At least there, it wouldn't be touched by anyone but me. That was the first time I'd actually stepped inside the Baxter place. Let me just say, it lived up to the hype. The front door stuck, the porch creaked like it was screaming, and there was enough dust to give a vacuum an asthma attack. Cobwebs in every corner, peeling wallpaper, and furniture so old it probably came with a ghost. The air smelled like dust and whatever wood rot smells like. Honestly, Brian wasn't wrong about the haunted vibe, but it was quiet, empty, and most importantly, it was mine. Even if it was falling apart, I owned it. Nobody could take that away. I cleared off a little space in what used to be the living room. Hard to tell with how cluttered it was, and started unloading Pop's boxes. Just sorting through it helped calm me down. There were pictures of him as a kid, letters he wrote to my grandma, a stack of invoices from a job he worked in 1985. That man never threw away a receipt. Then I found a set of old history books. Heavy hardcovers, cracked spines, pages yellowed at the edges. I started flipping through one of them, just to see if he'd scribbled notes in the margins. He did that a lot. That's when it happened. An envelope slid out from between the pages, just dropped onto the floor like it had been waiting for me. It wasn't labeled, just thick, sealed, and clean. Way cleaner than everything else in the room. I picked it up, turned it over, and recognized the handwriting immediately. Pop's. My heart rate doubled. I sat down, took a breath, and opened it carefully. Inside was a stack of papers. I skimmed the first few lines and felt the ground drop beneath me. It was a will. A different one. Dated 4 days before Pop died. Everything, and I mean everything, was left to me. I read it 3 times just to make sure I wasn't seeing things. The language was clear. Assets, properties, investment accounts, even the house my dad was renovating. All of it came to me. Signed at the bottom with Pop's full name. Same signature he used on every card he ever gave me growing up. I just sat there, staring at it like it might vanish. How the hell did this get here? Then it hit me. That box of books. My dad had been clearing out Pop's place, tossing stuff he didn't think mattered. This book, this random history book, must have been in one of the boxes he let me take. He probably didn't even look inside. If he had, he wouldn't have handed it over. There's no way. And it wasn't like he gave me those boxes out of kindness. He was cleaning house for himself, not me. He thought Pop's stuff was junk. Irony is, that junk had the one thing that could flip everything upside down. I sat there for a long time, just holding the will in my hands. It felt heavier than it should have. Not because of the paper, but because of what it meant. Pop didn't change his mind. He didn't leave me a busted house and call it a day. He left me everything, just like he said he would. So what happened? Who swapped the will? And who knew? I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but come on. There were only 2 people with both motive and access. My dad and Brian. They were the only ones who benefited from the version we heard at the reading. Everyone else either got nothing or a photo frame. I took out my phone and snapped a picture of the will. Then another. Then one more just to be safe. I carefully folded it back into the envelope, tucked it inside one of Pop's photo albums, and slid it deep into my backpack. I wasn't taking any chances. I didn't sleep that night. Just kept thinking about Pop's voice in my head saying, "I'm making sure you're okay." He meant it. He always meant what he said. Somebody tampered with his final decision. And now I had the proof. I barely slept the night I found that envelope. I kept checking my backpack like someone was going to sneak in and swipe it while I wasn't looking. Obviously, no one did. It's not like anyone else even knew it existed. but I couldn't shake the feeling. It was this mix of excitement and dread, like I just unearthed something that wasn't supposed to see daylight. The next morning, I went straight to Pop's lawyer's office. No appointment, just showed up the minute they opened. I sat in the waiting room with the envelope on my lap, zipped up in my backpack, clutched like it was a winning lottery ticket I was scared to lose. When I finally got called back, I walked in and said, "I need you to look at something." The lawyer gave me this polite, tired smile, probably thought I was going to ask for extra copies of the Baxter deed or something. I pulled the envelope out, laid it flat on his desk, and said, "I found this in one of my grandfather's old books. I think it changes everything." His expression shifted fast. He opened it slowly, carefully, like he already knew this wasn't just a copy of something he'd seen before. As he read through it, he didn't say anything, just adjusted his glasses, went page by page, then sat back in his chair like he got hit with a bucket of cold water. "This isn't the will I read at the meeting," he said finally. "I figured. It's dated later, 4 days before he passed. And this one leaves everything to you." "Yeah," I said. "That's what he always said he was going to do." He nodded. "This signature looks real. But obviously, we can't rely on assumptions. We'll need to verify." I expected that. I wasn't going to walk in and get handed keys to everything overnight. But I had something real now. I had the thing that put my gut feelings into writing. "I'll have both documents sent to a handwriting analyst for comparison," the lawyer said. "We'll check everything. Signature flow, pressure, writing habits. Do you happen to have anything with your grandfather's verified signature and handwriting? Something not related to these wills?" "Yeah," I said. "I've got letters, birthday cards, even a note he wrote in an old car manual we used to mess with." "Perfect. Bring those in. The more samples we have, the better the analysis." He was already pulling out files, typing something into his computer. I could tell this wasn't normal for him either. This wasn't a routine document correction. This was fraud-level stuff. Before I left, he made copies of the will I brought in and returned the original to me. I tucked it right back into my backpack. No way was I letting it leave my sight until this was settled. The second I got in my car, my hands were shaking. Not from nerves, just adrenaline. This whole time I'd been thinking I was overreacting, being paranoid, maybe even just being petty. But now? Now I knew something was wrong, and someone did it on purpose. I didn't want to tell anyone yet, not until I had proof, but keeping it to myself felt like trying to hold a lid on boiling water. So later that night, I did the one thing I probably shouldn't have. I told my parents. I drove over, walked into the living room, and dropped the news like a brick. I found another will. My dad froze like someone had hit pause on him. Brian, who was sitting on the couch with a smoothie and his feet up, sat forward way too quickly. My mom was the first to speak. "Another one? What do you mean?" I kept it calm. "It was inside one of the old books I picked up from Pop's house. It's dated 4 days before he passed. It leaves everything to me." Brian's face drained of color. He looked like he was about to get up and walk out the front door. My dad stayed quiet, but his jaw tightened. "Where is it now?" Dad asked suddenly. His voice wasn't loud, but it was sharp. I stared at him. "With the lawyer. He's having it examined." Brian jumped up. "You forged it. You're jealous. You're mad because you got the rat house and I got the real stuff." "Seriously?" I said. "You think I sat down with a fountain pen and taught myself how to copy Grandpa's handwriting? That's your best explanation?" "You never got over not being the favorite," Brian said, waving his arms like he was trying to win an argument on some reality show. "You always played the victim. Now you're trying to steal what we were given." I looked at my dad. "You gonna say anything?" He stayed silent for a few seconds. Then, "If this is real, it'll come out in the analysis." "Yeah," I said. "It will. And when it does, we'll see exactly who stole what." My mom looked totally lost. "How could there be two wills?" I shrugged. "You tell me. All I know is one of them was in a book no one touched until I brought it home." Brian kept pacing. "He probably just forgot to destroy it. He wrote a new one and left it with the lawyer. That's the real one." "No," I said. "The one I found was written later, and it was sealed. He meant for someone to find it." We argued for a while after that, me staying calm, them getting louder. It got heated. My dad tried to act neutral, but the fact that he asked where the will was before anything else said enough, he didn't even deny it, just deflected, which was kind of his specialty. Before I left, I said one last thing. "The handwriting expert needs 2 more days. If it's fake, you have nothing to worry about, right?" None of them answered. Brian sat back down, arms crossed, eyes darting. My dad turned away like he had somewhere better to be. But I saw it. That flicker of panic. They knew what they did. They just didn't think I'd ever find out. 2 days felt like a year. I kept checking my phone every 5 minutes. I'd reread the will I found probably 20 times, memorized the signature, the way Pop crossed his T's, even the slight lean in his handwriting. I wasn't a handwriting expert or anything, but I knew how he wrote. Every birthday card he ever gave me had the same rhythm. No loops, no swirls, just strong, clean strokes like a guy who meant every word. Finally, around 11 a.m. on a Wednesday, the lawyer called. The specialist confirmed it, he said. The first will, the one read aloud, is a forgery. I didn't even breathe, just listened as he kept going. The signature is inconsistent. The pressure's uneven. Even the paper and ink age don't match. The one you found, on the other hand, checks out completely. It's real. It's your grandfather's handwriting, and it was the last one he wrote. I didn't know what to say. I just sat there holding the phone while the floor of my crappy apartment felt like it shifted underneath me. The estate is legally frozen for now, he continued, until the court decides how to proceed, but I've already notified the authorities. I thanked him, hung up, and sat in silence for a solid 10 minutes. Not from shock, not even from relief, just processing. It was real. Pop had meant what he said, and someone tried to erase that. I didn't wait. I called the police, explained the whole thing, and forwarded the report the lawyer sent me. I filed a formal complaint, document forgery, tampering with a legal record, attempted fraud. All of it. Turns out, forgery of a legal will isn't some slap on the wrist offense. It's serious. We're talking felony level stuff, depending on how deep it goes. And since the fake will directly benefited my dad and Brian, and they were the only two who had access to Pop during those last few days, they were the prime suspects. I wasn't surprised when they came knocking at my dad's place the next afternoon. They didn't arrest him right away, but they asked questions. Real questions. The kind where lying just makes things worse. Brian wasn't there at first. He showed up halfway through the conversation wearing aviators and acting like the cops were just there for noise complaints. But the second they asked him when he last saw Pop, his whole vibe changed. He fumbled, stuttered, couldn't look anyone in the eye. And then, like a cheap folding chair, he cracked. He didn't confess everything immediately, but he said just enough for the cops to keep pushing. By the next morning, the full story was out. Turns out, about a week before Pop died, Dad and Brian went to visit him. First time in forever. They brought groceries and some random excuse about checking in. Pop told them straight up, everything was going to me. Said I was the only one who looked out for him. Brian got mad, but Dad lost it. He started yelling, called Pop ungrateful, said the family deserved better. Pop held his ground. He told them, it's done. I wrote it up. It's final. So they left. But the next day, Brian went back alone, played nice, acted sweet, helped Pop bring in the mail, and made him tea like they were best friends. Pop had heart meds, strong ones that made him drowsy. Once he nodded off in his chair, Brian went upstairs, found Pop's office, and tore it apart looking for the will. And yeah, it was handwritten. Pop never trusted printers or digital anything. Both versions were handwritten, which is why they needed a specialist. But Brian had already started preparing. He'd been practicing Pop's signature for weeks, probably ever since Dad told him he wasn't getting anything. He found the real will, copied everything except the part where it all went to me, and rewrote it to benefit him and my dad. Then he signed Pop's name at the bottom, shoved the real one into a nearby book, and left. Here's the kicker, though. He never told my dad where he hid the original. He panicked and didn't think it through. And he had no idea Dad would be the one cleaning out Pop's house a few days later. Brian thought he'd go back and get it, or maybe it'd just stay buried and forgotten. He didn't know that Dad would toss all the junk into boxes, and he definitely didn't know that I'd ask to take those boxes home. He thought the house would go to Dad, the book would sit on a dusty shelf until it got thrown out, and the fake will would stick. Instead, Dad unknowingly gave me the book with the real will still inside. That mistake? That's what buried them. I took out the will. I had it. And that accident unraveled their entire plan. Amanda, by the way, she ghosted the second Brian called her crying from the police station, packed her stuff, wiped her social media, and dipped. Guess the love reinvestment had terms and conditions. My mom didn't say much. She refused to believe it for a while, said it was some mistake or confusion, but after the police showed up with a report in hand and a copy of both wills, she stopped defending them. The estate court scheduled an emergency hearing. It was formal, but quick. Once the handwriting analysis was presented, along with Brian's signed statement, the judge ruled that the original will, the one Pop meant to use, was valid. Everything came to me. House, properties, accounts, all of it. Brian and my dad? They were both charged. Forgery, fraud, Conspiracy to defraud. Dad got 5 years. Brian got 2. No trial. They pled out. Probably the smartest decision they've made in a long time. I stood in that courtroom and watched them both get sentenced. Neither looked at me. Didn't matter. I wasn't there for revenge. I was there because Pop trusted me, and I wasn't going to let that be erased. Sometimes I still think about it. Like, how do you even get that greedy? How do you look at your own dad, sick and barely hanging on, and think, yeah, let's fake a will? It's not even just about money at that point. It's about ego, entitlement, thinking you're owed something just because you exist. That's what gets me. I'll never understand it. Me? I'm doing good now. Life's calm. I wake up in a house that actually feels like mine. I've got savings, zero debt, no drama, and the peace of knowing I didn't screw anyone over to get here. I earned it by being decent when no one else was. And honestly, that's the real win.